Greetings and salutations. It is I, Mr. Nothing, the museum curator of the weird and the strange and the host who might be a ghost. Welcome back to Around the Weird, a booktube channel where I talk about unusual and out of the ordinary literature. Today I want to talk about a book that I've read, a book about immigration and the fear of being in a new culture shock. I wanted to talk about The Book of Unknown Americans by Cristina Henriquez. A fine book. There's a lot of problems with it. I got it from our local library, so don't forget to patronize your local libraries. For those that don't know, Cristina Henriquez is an author. She's been writing for about 15 or so years. Probably longer than that, because the first time you're published doesn't mean that's when you started writing. Of course. This is, I think, her third book that's been published. She's probably written many other things, but she primarily writes about immigration and the Latino American experience in the United States and abroad. When I first checked out this book, I didn't think I knew about Cristina Henriquez. However, I looked her up and I found that I actually read one of her books before. Back in 2015, I had taken a class on on Latino literature, where I read The Brief and Wondrous Life of Oscar Wilde and books by Isabel Allende, a prolific author in Latino literature. But I also read a book by Cristina Henriquez called The World Apart, which I thought was fine. It was about a girl who discovers letters written to her mother after her mother dies from her Panamanian father. So she goes to Panama to learn more about her father and finds herself torn between her Panamanian heritage and her American heritage. And the story deals with that. And I thought it was fine at the time, but I've largely forgotten many of the plot points in the story. So that should tell you, something about it, that it's kind of forgettable. This story, unfortunately, is also forgettable, and I'll explain why. Without further ado, let's talk about The Book of Unknown Americans. I'll do a little summary, a little analysis, and we will move on from there. So the Book of Unknown Americans starts with the Rivera family, Alma, Arturo, and Maribel. They have moved from Mexico to Delaware, and they're just dropped off in a truck. Arturo has moved to Delaware with his family to work at a mushroom farm. He has a green card, so he's going to try to make his way in America. But another reason that the family has moved from Mexico to America is because their daughter, Maribel, has a traumatic brain injury that resulted from her falling off a ladder at her father's construction site. So the family wants a new start. They're still dealing with the consequences of that with Maribel. They hope that she'll get better, but there seems to be no sign of that yet. And there's a little blame going on between Alma and Arturo that is kind of dealt with throughout the story. They arrive, and there's a little bit of trouble with adjusting to the culture in terms of buying groceries, difficulties at work. Figuring out the bus schedule, given that Alma doesn't really speak English. And also Alma is trying to get Maribel in a disability class, but she doesn't have an IO4 something like that. She doesn't have the individualized education plan, IEP. There we go. That she needs, and so it's going to take a while before Maribel can get that. So she has to be in regular classes at least until Maribel can get into the classes that she kind of needs at this point. Alma runs into the Toro family, including Mayor Toro. The story is kind of told from his perspective as well. He's a little bit of a rebel teenager, but he has a good heart. It doesn't seem like he's his parents' favorite, although that's not what the story's about. Toro takes a liking to Maribel and seeks to protect her from another teenager named Garrett, who wishes to exploit her. He's kind of a jerk. Like, he doesn't like that she's an immigrant, but he also makes fun of her because she's retarded, and tries to take advantage of her in sexually exploitive ways because of that. And so Toro gets into a fight with Garrett, and ends up getting in trouble at home, getting grounded, and having to deal with that, and being told he can't really see Maribel. Shortly after Christmas, Arturo loses his job at the mushroom factory, and he has 30 days to find a new job, or else he'll lose his green card and they'll have to go back to Mexico. And so things are a bit of a struggle, as they were already a bit of a struggle since they were lower income, and they were barely making ends meet as it was. Mayor's father also loses his job at a diner, so there's a bit of a difference there. I should have stressed, Mayor's family is Panamanian, and they've been living in the United States for a while, and they're citizens, compared to the Riveras, who are not citizens, but they're still falling on hard times, as this is about 2009, 2010 when the story takes place, and the economy is still in a little bit of a turmoil at that point. Mayor and Maribel become closer. They end up making out in Mayor's father's car, and someone sees them, and so they go to Mayor and Maribel's parents, and Mayor is told he can't see Maribel again. However, he steals his father's car and picks up Maribel, and they go off for a drive where they again start making out and have a good time together. However, they get stuck in a snowstorm, so Arturo's are what am I trying to say here? Mayor's father picks him up and is a bit angry, and he drops him off at the hospital. As it turns out, Arturo found out about Garrett trying to sexually exploit, assault Maribel, and so he went to his Garrett's father. But Garrett's father shot him with a shotgun for reasons that aren't fully explained, but you could probably say it's related to the fact that Arturo is Latino, an immigrant, and Garrett's father doesn't like immigrants or something like that. It's not really explained. Unfortunately, Arturo doesn't make it. He ends up dying, and this means that Alma and Maribel have to return to Mexico. The story does end on a somewhat of a hopeful note, as Maribel begins to make some more progress with her traumatic brain injury, and it seems like she might be returning back to herself before the accident. And Alma feels some hope about returning to Mexico because the culture shock was getting to be a little too much for her, and she missed life in Mexico. In terms of analysis, there are a few things we're talking about here. The first is the idea of confusion after the immigration process. The Riveras are just dropped off in the middle of Delaware, near where their home is, and expected to figure out the process of getting groceries, of finding their home, of figuring out their life after they've moved to a new place, which would be difficult for anybody, let alone immigrants in the United States. So you're already kind of set in their mind of how things are difficult for them. But this Henriquez does a great thing by the first thing she does is have them buy groceries. They end up going to a gas station, which isn't the best place to buy groceries, and they have difficulty finding the food they need. But when they go to pay the cashier expects more money, and they don't know if the cashier is trying to cheat them or like how much more money the cashier needs if they just haven't given them enough. And so it's a bit of a struggle. I like how Henriquez does that to get you in the mindset, because I've been in that situation before where I didn't know the customs or the expectations of a new place, and I didn't want to embarrass myself, and the Riveras don't want to embarrass themselves here. They don't want to appear out of place because that would make them different and to be feared. And I think Henriquez does a great job with that, right off the bat, helping you understand their confusion and the culture shock that is prevalent throughout the story. There's also the idea of unknown Americans. There's an interesting quote that I would like to read to you. Let us find it And so one of the characters in the few chapters that are about the community members who are also immigrants, one of them says, "We're the unknown Americans, the one no one even wants to know, because they've been told they're supposed to be scared of us, and because maybe if they did take the time to get to know us, they might realize that we're not that bad. Maybe even that we're a lot like them, and who would they hate then?" Which I think it's at the real life immigration process, where there's a lot of Americans out there who have immigrated to the United States and become close to or fully realized American citizens, and they're going through their life and they're doing the best that they can. But a lot of I want to say white Americans fear these people because they're unknown. People like Donald Trump tell them that these people are rapists, or they're coming here to steal your jobs, or they're coming here to cause some sort of harm, maybe illegally voting in some sort of way. And so they're to be feared, but also there's the idea that if you take away that fear, who would they hate? Maybe that hate would be internalized or something like that, or they'd realize their own struggle in life. But perhaps they need to realize their own struggle in life so that there can be class unity, and that's a whole socialist message that isn't part of this novel. So the issue is like, I like that Henriquez says that and has that in here, because it rings true. However, it doesn't really apply to the characters in this story. Who fears the Riveras in this story? They don't really encounter personal obstructions in the form of people. There's tons of obstructions in terms of not being able to make ends meet or having trouble finding a job. But Henriquez goes out of her way to put this story in the middle of the Obama presidency, the first term, and it doesn't seem like there's any people who are obstructing them in that sort of way. Like, everything can be attributed to class and how things are a struggle financial wise. So that's the real obstruction in the Rivera's life. The only person who seems to hate the Riveras is Garrett, and maybe by extension Garrett's father. But Garrett's behavior can be attributed to the fact that he doesn't like Maribel because she's retarded, and that's what he wants to abuse her because of that, because she's different in that way. It doesn't really seem like he hates her because she's an immigrant. And if she does, it's a small child. What power does that small child have to terrorize your life? Although it's possible he could have gotten his father to shoot Arturo. Still, it's a message that it rings true, but it doesn't carry through thematically with the rest of the story. And I feel like Henriquez dropped the ball there. Another problem with this story is that it's overly optimistic. Now, hey, I like a feel-good story as much as the rest, the rest of everybody. But I feel like this story being set in the Obama era, and it was published in 2014, so immigration was slightly different then than it is now. But the story was set in the Obama era, so it has a very optimistic tone that maybe the immigration process is going to be redeemed in some sort of way. Obama created DACA, and he smoothed the process to apply for green cards and whatnot. He didn't fix every problem, as is apparent by the deciding to keep children in cages as well as what Donald Trump did. But there was a hopeful tone to his presidency in terms of immigration. So the story does come off as overly optimistic, that especially in 2020, where things are not as they seem in this story. There are numerous other obstacles for the Rivera family. They might not have actually been able to immigrate to America, and if they would have, there would have been a number of other, discriminatory things going on for them at the time. Maribel might not have even been able to accompany them as they move into their new lives. So I guess with the benefit of it feels dated is what I'm trying to say. Maybe it worked in 2014, but it doesn't really work now. And I guess related to that, because it's overly optimistic, it doesn't seem like there's really a struggle for the Riveras here. I'm not really sure what Enriquez is trying to say about the Riveras. A lot of their struggle, again, seems to be related to class. They don't have a lot of money. They don't have a lot of social power to strike or anything like that. So they can't make a better life for themselves. But it doesn't really seem like there's an obstruction related to their immigration status beyond the culture shock. And I don't feel like Enriquez does enough to touch upon that culture shock issue, because by the end of the story, yeah, Alma wants to go home, but Arturo didn't really want to go home. So it doesn't really seem like there's enough there. And if the story is that they moved to America to deal with Maribel's brain trauma, well, that's weird. Why would you immigrate to America just for that? There doesn't seem to be a through line connecting this book from point A to point B at the very end. So I'm not really sure what the struggle is and what the story is. And the ending where Arturo just gets shot, like Enriquez doesn't do enough work to get to that point either. So there's a lot of iffy bad storytelling points throughout this story that I wish it'd be easy to fix if Enriquez gave this another pass through, I think, before publishing it, but unfortunately she didn't. Those are my thoughts on the Book of Unknown Americans. It's a fine story, but I didn't like it too much. It's really well told and it's beautiful at parts, but ultimately there's a number of problems that just make me wonder, like, what's the point of this story? It's kind of contradictory in a lot of ways, and I can't recommend it out there unless you can deal with that contradictory nature. So yeah, that's going to be a strong not recommend on my part. If you read this story before and you have something to say, comment below. I would love to hear from you. Let's have a discussion about this book. Maybe you can see the book from a different perspective and help me understand maybe what I'm missing here. Otherwise, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so that we can get this book and Cristina Henriquez out to the masses so we can talk about some of her other books in the future. Otherwise, I wish you the best of luck in your weird and immigration-y travels. Farewell.